On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, construction updates, local singer 1911, U.S. generals embarrass their profession, and an inspiring story of survival out of Isreal. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is episode 319 of the John 1911 podcast, and this is going to be a solo episode. Today is Friday the 13th, October 13th. It is a couple minutes before 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and as I announced on, I guess, a previous episode, that we were going to be slowing down just a little bit with a bunch of range construction and things going on around the armory. So I was hoping not to go this long without a podcast, but unfortunately, here we are. So let's get into it and kind of bring everybody up to speed on some stuff and maybe some things I'm sure all of you will find interesting. So first thing is, many of you have sent messages, and I appreciate that. The website, well, the website wasn't down, but the newsletter wasn't going out for about a week. And the first time it missed, I guess it was Tuesday, last Tuesday, I had thought it was just like maybe a little blip. And not to get into all the technical details of how an RSS feed works, but there's a window of, where the system will basically take a snapshot of the website and say, are there any new posts to John 1911? And then it'll go, oh yes, there's 3. It'll take those and it'll push them out in email. That's how an RSS feed works. Well, there's about a 5-minute window, and I had just somehow convinced myself that the newsletter didn't publish because maybe the website blipped. Maybe the website for some reason was down for just like 5 minutes. Because I'm busy. There's just so much going on. Well, no, it turns out that no, we missed it. We missed the second one, and so I had to deal with this new company because we had changed our newsletter earlier in the year. You'll notice we have a new format. Well, it entails using a new service, and so we are a fairly large service for them. But this is the first time we've ever actually had to really use some serious help desk ticket stuff, because one thing that they're very impressed by, which I need to thank all of you are on, is our open rates. Our open rates are sky high. So, and considering how large our email list is, I mean, look, we're not, I'm trying to think of someone big. Like, I don't know, like we're not Burt Reynolds. I mean, no one knows who Burt Reynolds is anymore, and he's dead. So I'm trying to think who would have, I don't know, does Taylor Swift have a mailing list? I'm sure all those little screaming girls open up 100% of her emails. And I'm not saying that we're anywhere near Taylor Swift's open rate, but we're pretty high. So anyway, we got all that straightened out, and so I sent out because, we're backlogging on content, and so I sent out a newsletter a couple days ago, or yesterday, to kind of flush out the backlog of content some of you don't see, and that way we'll be back to regularly scheduled newsletter content for the Saturday publication, which will be for tomorrow at 7 a.m., which this podcast will be at the top of the page for. So sorry about that. And, we got to figure it out. Just was poor timing. Normally I'd get it done sooner, but I've been distracted with some stuff. Speaking of stuff, we're building, we're making some significant changes, obviously, here at John 1911, and making changes. I'm using this as an opportunity to make some changes with the armory. We're making changes at the armory, and I'm using it as an opportunity to make significant changes even to the range. So there's a bunch of construction stuff going on at the range. And one of the unfortunate things that we had happen is I had to fire the project manager. This happened almost, I don't know, probably about 10 days ago. I had to fire this guy. There's an axiom in business. It's called fail quickly. And this guy was failing, and so I went ahead and killed him quick. So we are in the middle of this project, dealing with new vendors, and so we're talking to a bunch of Amish people, and that's interesting. There's not a lot of Amish from where I grew up. I never really saw Amish until I came to Ohio, but I'm trying to have some conversations with these guys. They all seem very nice. But I remember I was talking to this one guy, and we're talking about, because we're putting in facilities at the range. And so, if you're going to have electric, we're going to have electric, we're going to have heat, we're going to have HVAC, I guess that's heat. We're going to have high-speed internet, all this septic, all this stuff. And so we were discussing the HVAC stuff, and I'm talking to this Amish guy, and he's, giving me some, his initial visit, looking at everything. And we're talking about, I guess, a mini split versus what I would call our traditional furnace air conditioner setup. There's probably many of you that know all about this. I mean, I know how a furnace works. I know how an air conditioner works. But the mini split thing was kind of new to me. So, I'm talking to this guy, the Amish guy, and I asked him a question because, like, right now, I'm recording a podcast. And so in the future, I'd like to be able to produce and publish the content from the range. Hence why we want fiber optic out there. Well, I asked him, I said, well, is a mini split really loud? Because if I'm recording a podcast and all of a sudden in the background it's, it sounds like I'm in a refrigerator or something. That would be terrible. And there's this moment of pause, and he goes, I don't know. And then another moment of pause, and I thought to myself, well, of course the Amish guy doesn't know, which air conditioning unit is louder because he doesn't have air conditioning in his house. And so I looked at him and I said, you don't have air conditioning in your house, do you? Because you're Amish. And he goes, yes. I'm like, well, I promise you that's not going to be the dumbest thing I ask you if you get this job. So, don't ever be embarrassed. You think when I was a young man that, when maybe you're young and maybe you're afraid to talk to girls or maybe you're afraid to talk to celebrities, that, as you get older, you'd be slicker and, smarter and more nimble on your feet. But no, I'm 52 years old, and I asked an Amish guy which air conditioning unit he prefers. So yeah, those so good times. Just as an aside, I don't know if this is, I don't mean to laugh. I don't know if this is an issue with the Amish guys, because I don't know what I don't know. So I'm talking to these Amish guys, and they all have phones. They all have cell phones. And so, there was the, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 10 days. It's been so, they did the new, we used to call them like the civil defense testing, like they'd blow the siren, when we were kids, like on Wednesdays. I guess all of you saw where they did a test where they basically sent the emergency alert system through every mobile device in the country at maybe like 3:00 on a certain day. Well, there was a story that hit the news, hit the media, that a bunch of Amish guys are being shunned by their communities because a lot of them were caught having cell phones. So here we go. This is out of Daily Mail. Amish men shunned following emergency alert test that outed them for having cell phones. Let's see. A national smartphone emergency alert got his friends from the religious community in trouble for having phones. Every U.S. smartphone, television, and radio received an alert on Wednesday at 2:18 Eastern Standard Time. Unfortunately, for 3 members of the Amish community, the alert was also involved a powerful alarm sound that outed them for having modern devices which goes against their beliefs. Amish beliefs and traditions condemn modern technology, encourage plain clothing. The community is known for not using any modern devices, dressing in old-fashioned clothes, and even opting for a horse and buggy to get around. So, I've noticed when I'm communicating with these Amish guys that, they have cell phones. And so I don't know what's what. Like, I don't know how it all works. Like the one guy even asked him, I said, so, the air conditioning guy said, so you are Amish, right? So he's like, yes, I'm Amish. I just want to be, Amish versus Mennonite. I'll make sure I get it right, get a man's religion right. And he's like, no, I'm Amish. And so, what I subsequently found out, I tried to text one of these guys, and I got this strange response. I've never gotten this before, where basically the system said, this person is not accepting text messages from you. And I was like, well, fuck me. Like, what did I do to you? Like, you're not, I don't need you. We'll hire another Amish guy. Turns out all these Amish guys, they don't text. And so, and subsequently I found out how these Amish contractors that we're talking to do a bunch of this construction, they don't drive, they don't have cars, and they don't even technically have cell phones. But what they do is they all hire drivers. So the first Amish guy that showed up at the range, he's calling me. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to find, it's like, no, yeah, it's here, not there. Cause our property's kind of hidden. And, he pulls in, I meet him up at the front and, pull him into a field, and they're in a little Honda Prelude, and there's this woman driving it. And I know what an Amish woman looks like. And this was not an Amish woman. And I'm like, I'm not judging. I don't know. And so turns out these Amish guys, they don't own cell phones and they don't drive, but if they're, business people, they hire drivers. There's people that have jobs driving around Amish dudes. And I'm sure there's a ton of you that know this, but I had no idea. But apparently also these guys they don't have a cell phone. It's their driver's cell phone. So it was just, very, just cultural, the cultural differences of dealing with the Amish and projects and all that kind of stuff. So, we are having some issues. This has been delayed so much, the project, that I am getting a little bit worried dealing with the winter, because we are actually building a building. We're not doing a pole barn. We're actually pouring a proper foundation. So yeah, it's been kind of crazy. So with that being said, we have a shipping container that we use on property. And so I was looking like, well, maybe I should get some more shipping containers just to kind of maybe store some stuff in. And did some looking. And if you don't know this, most shipping containers today in the world, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of them are made in China. Surprise, surprise. If you look at the markings, a lot of them will, they'll say like the one we have, I think, is in Shenzhen or somewhere. So if you look at them new on the internet, and there's there's a description of, the products, like, there's 20-foot, 40-foot, high cubed, whether they double door open or whether they're reefers, refrigerated, and all these, one trip, they basically knew they're one trip containers, all these different categories. But it was interesting because all this stuff comes out of China. And so it's Chinese people ultimately writing these descriptions. It's either Chinese people or chat AI thing. So one of the ways they describe shipping containers, they're good for your job site or labor camp housing. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, listen to this again. These shipping containers, being by this size or whatever, and they're great for your job site or labor camp housing. And I'm thinking, holy shit, Chinese communist dude, you better check your phrasing. So, so shipping containers are being billed and marketed as labor camp housing. I just, talk about a cultural clash with, us in America. Okay, in some industry news I thought was worth sharing, there's something that popped up locally that just kind of blew my hair back. And I know a lot of you high-end collector guys, not that we're excluding ourselves from that. We're just we're type collectors, not variant collectors. There's an old joke in the 1911 community, and the joke goes basically something like this: of the hundreds of Singer 1911s made, there are thousands of them for sale at gun shows around the country, because a lot of them are faked. The Singer is considered, for many people, I wouldn't say for everybody, but for many 1911 collectors, kind of like the Holy Grail. 1911 to get, because Singer Sewing Company apparently made them to a very high standard. They didn't make a whole lot of them. I don't recall exactly the reason why. I don't know if the contract got canceled, but they were considered extremely high quality. I think that probably the highest quality. And some of that could be just, romanticizing, something that's, becomes hard to get, or, a low production number suddenly, gets transposed into being this high quality thing. But I think there's some basis to the claim that the Singer sewing machine company 1911s from World War II are, pretty high quality. But what was interesting is there's a local, I'm not going to say all of them, there's a local auction house here to us in Cincinnati called Cowan's, and they've been around a long, long time. Actually, if you have ever watched or consumed any content with the woman who used to run the Cody Firearms Museum, she was the curator or the director of the museum. Ashley Hibbins. I'm so terrible. Hiblinski. She got married. She married a guy who he's a competitive shooter, and he works for one of the Ammo Inc. I think on the they're traded on the stock exchange. Neither here nor there. She consults with Cowan's, okay, and one of the things that Cowan's has popped up with in their upcoming auction catalog is a Singer sewing machine company 1911. It's like, wow, that's, hey, it's probably got the provenance because it's at a, very well respected auction house, and it happens to be here in Cincinnati. But what's even more interesting is it's a Cutaway. I have never heard of a Singer Cutaway. I mean, I think Cutaway guns are cool. I'd love to have a nice Cutaway 1911. And the fact that there's a Cutaway 1911 that's a Singer, I was like, holy cow, I wonder what that's going to go for. But it's here in Cincinnati at Cowan's Auctions. We'll have a link on the website. Let's see here. Oh, also in news, let me just clear my throat real quick. Sorry about that. Smith & Wesson, my understanding, has officially now moved their headquarters. They are now a Tennessee-based company. Smith & Wesson is gone out of the Northeast. They have opened up their $125 million headquarters in Tennessee. So Smith & Wesson is a Tennessee company now. And it's going to be interesting to see excuse me, it's going to be interesting to see, as some of these companies, as they move to different places, obviously, you'd see some disruption in their productions or their production schedule. And some of these companies have been around a long time, and it's like they have a lot of institutional memory as far as how they do things. And you wonder how many Colt employees or Smith & Wesson employees or critical employees would pick up and move to, say, Tennessee. Now, me living in Ohio, I would think, but that'd be a no-brainer. I'm, stuck in New York or Connecticut or wherever they're at, and move to Tennessee. That would be a no-brainer. But if you have to look at it as kind of like as an adult. If you worked at Smith & Wesson for 30 years or 25 years and you're getting close to retirement, and you have born and raised up there in the Northeast, you raised your children up there, you might have grandchildren, and now suddenly for the last few years, you can easily see a lot of people realistically that they're not going to pick up and move to Tennessee. Young dudes or, people that, really, really want to, go on adventures or do things or whatever. But a lot of people, they've got, they got kids in high school, or, there's their spouse has jobs. There's all this, they got, mortgages, there's all this stuff. And it's just going to be really interesting to see if companies like Smith & Wesson see a dip in their, in kind of like their quality or their production, or, what kind of issues they face internally, moving officially to Tennessee. Additionally, for example, Kimber. I think Kimber has now moved to Atlanta. Kimber is no longer. Don't hold me to it. I don't think Kimber is based in Yonkers, New York anymore. I know that they have a facility. I believe it's in Alabama, but at some point, if they haven't completely moved their company, they will probably move to Alabama. But it kind of makes you wonder, I mean, I'm speaking a little bit in tropes here. I don't know, but I would think dudes in Alabama would give a greater dam on how those guns are fitted or put together, maybe than as opposed to some people in Yonkers, New York. Now, and that's probably being a little unfair to some people in Yonkers, but, let's be real. Kimber guns really are not fit, and we all know this is true. And so, I don't know, it would be interesting to watch Kimber, say, over the next, decade, or if they become more of a, semi-custom kind of 1911 maker. So anyway, also in kind of crappy news, the ATF has gone after, well, they're going to go after UTM and simunitions. And if you're in the training space, if you've ever done force on force with these marking rounds, you'll see police departments with Glock pistols that are blue. Those are UTM rounds, and then there's a simunition, and so it's like a glorified paintball gun, so they can practice scenario-based shooting. And you see a lot of trainers and private facilities and travel trainers use this kind of stuff. Most famously for our demographic, if where would you see simunitions being used or UTM marking rounds? You would probably be Craig Douglas and some of his content. He does the ShivWorks, managing unknown contacts, and he does some jujitsu and the ground fighting. It's a very comprehensive curriculum. He's a very smart man. But a lot of times you'll see they will publish content where they're using these marking rounds, to train. Well, the ATF, because simunitions, I think, is based in Canada and UTM is in the United Kingdom, the ATF is basically trying to strong-arm these companies and say, you can import this stuff into the U.S. and sell it to police departments, but because of maybe it's not for sporting purposes, they're trying to use the sporting purposes thing, you can't sell them to civilians. And it's just like that, slimy ass shit. It's like, oh, wait a minute. The ammo is not, it's not firearms. I mean, it's not bullets. So do they have the authority? I mean, all the guns that fire simunitions are considered real guns. They're serialized as real guns, but is the ammo considered real ammo? Does the ATF even have jurisdiction, the authority to even go after this stuff? It'd be worth watching, and but it's just another one of these, boa constrictor kind of little bullcrap things that the statists kind of do to kind of just slowly eat away at our gun rights. So we'll be following that. We'll have some links on the website to talk about it. Obviously, I'm going to have to mention the pending Israeli-Hamas Gaza Strip war, and the attack that happened, over there in Israel. If you're new here, obviously we're going to be pro-Israel over here. Fun fact: a lot of the older folks that have been around a long time will know this. Not that I lead with it, but I'm actually of Lebanese descent. I'm a lot of different things, but my grandmother on my father's side was a Lebanese Christian, and so I've seen what's happened to Lebanon. I've seen what happens over there, and people making excuses for Hezbollah and people making excuses for Hamas, and a lot of them don't even understand where the borders, the pre-65, borders, and and kind of how the Gaza Strip got set up to how it even is. And we don't need to rehash all that crap here. If you want to, I know quite a bit about this, but if there's other people you can get this from. But it brings up two things. The first thing is, I think it's worth mentioning, you're seeing all these people in the U.S., like I just did, stake out a position, we're very pro-Israel. I'm very pro-Israel. But, there are people that have come out that are taking the other side of the argument, or taking the other, trying to say, trying to do the whataboutism or the moral equivalency of the various things. And some people are just come out and flat out saying on both sides, the maybe the Palestinians are saying kill all the Jews, and maybe there's some, and there are actual radical Jewish people in Israel that would be like kill all the Palestinians. I mean, they doesn't get a lot of play here, and I'm pro-Israel, but that is absolutely a thing. That's who I was one of those kind of people that assassinated, off the top of my head, it was Yitzhak Rabin. Is that who they assassinated? And it was because they were pulling people out of the, some of these, at the time it was the occupied territories, but neither here nor there. What's interesting is, and I think a lot of people who want to censor speech don't realize, or they seem to conveniently forget, is with the First Amendment in the United States is, you're seeing, the people coming out with these comments that are just abhorrent, on either side, in some respects, but that are abhorrent. And then, them having the ability to say that kind of nasty shit or to justify these crazy murders gives all of us straight up information from the horse's mouth to know what people think, like it's good to find out if someone someone tells you that they basically believe in mass murder. It's like, oh, I'm glad you said that, because I'd rather address that right now than, be associating with a mass murderer later. And I'm not talking about canceling people or doing like that, but it's just like, there are, as a business person, there are moral turpitude clauses, and, with how people reflect on your business or reflect on your reputation, you're certainly free to go out and do what you want to do or say what you want to say. But, I mean, if, advocating murdering people, it's like, maybe we might want to talk about, your employment status over here, that kind of thing. But you can't figure a lot of this stuff out without the First Amendment. And what's really interesting is, especially because the mainstream media for 20, 30, well, really for 50 years, has really pushed certain narratives, and they don't tell the full story. Now, again, you could flip what I just said, and the other side of the argument, people would make the other side of the argument, be like, of course, but it would be against the Israelis as opposed to the Palestinians. I get that. But what's happening now is with social media and people can give instant hot takes, is I don't need Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather or, Sean Hannity to tell me what people think, because I can get on the internet and I can look at a dude and be like, that motherfucker is all for this. And, there's no spinning it. There's no, there's no trying to couch it. There's no trying to pretend it didn't happen, or it's a, this is a, that is a extreme example of one person that doesn't reflect the wider spectrum of people. It turns out millions and billions of people are on the internet expressing their opinions, and you start to realize, and there's a lot of people out there that believe things that you didn't think, that people would believe, whether it's, murdering people or being a Nazi or all kinds of shit. And it's like, without the First Amendment, you don't get the benefit of people telling you, who they are. As far as, why this happened, I mean, other than like the actual issue, I don't think it's getting a lot of play here. A lot of people don't realize. So the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Isreal have been in negotiations for a number of, probably for most of the year, and it's to do two things. It's an extension of the Abraham Accords that happened under the Trump administration, and with Jared Kushner really did all that. And it was amazing. Like, so Israel was able to establish diplomatic relations with certain countries. Well, what's happening is now there's an opportunity. Is Saudi Arabia is more and more concerned about Iran because it's their mortal enemies, and Saudi Arabia would like a defense pact with the United States. And it's like, well, they kind of have one, but not really. They'd like a defense pact, like a NATO style defense pact. Like, we agree 100% to defend Saudi Arabia. That's what they want. And, they were flirting with the Chinese for a little bit, but it's, and the Saudis don't get along with Biden at all. They hate his ass. But, they want a defense pact. And what they're offering is, they're basically saying, why don't we cut a deal and normalize relations with Israel? Because we know Israel is a powerful military country, and they have their enemies of Iran, and they have a lot of economic power, and they have a lot of intelligence capabilities, and they could do this almost security. We would be the backers of it. Saudi Arabia would establish regular relations with Israel, and Israel would have good relations with Saudi Arabia, and they would work together on how to stop and counter Iran's influence. And what Saudi Arabia is willing to do is they want to cut the Palestinians loose. And this is the part of the story that doesn't get told in the West. It doesn't get told in the U.S. media, but but this has been known for a while. Most of the Arab countries are sick as fuck of the Palestinians, and this is nothing to do with the recent issues and the attacks and the craziness that's going on. It's this. The Palestinians don't want peace. They don't want a two-state solution. They, Arafat stabbed Bill Clinton in the back on a two-state solution. That's the PLO group in the West Bank, and then there's the Gaza group. Hamas took them over, and you give them money, and all they do is they take the money and they don't build shit with it. They don't try to improve their situation. They just want to make rockets and do whatever, and it's just becoming this ongoing thing. And actually, it doesn't get reported much in the Western press because people don't know their history. But you'll hear this phrase all the time, where it's like, okay, Gaza is an open air prison, or your prison camp or something. And it's like, well, cool story, bro. But, Gaza used to be controlled by the Egyptians, because they have Gaza, the southern strip of Gaza borders to Sinai, which is Egyptian territory. And so they have borders with Israel, borders with Egypt. And what happened was, they're so out of control that the Egyptians basically are like, we don't want them. They cut them loose, and the Israelis pulled out of there in 2005. They're like, we're getting the fuck out of here. Y'all can do what you're gonna fucking do. We're not gonna come in here, and so so all these years they get to build up all this shit and then do all this stuff. So, but a lot of this stuff is just not portrayed exactly correctly, because the media will try to spin it as one side is victimizing the other side, but the reality is, I mean, you can, I'm pro-Israel, but you can certainly make an argument that the Palestinians have done quite a bit of victimizing themselves. They have not actually wanted peace. They've done a lot of things that hasn't really worked out for the goals that the Western media says they want. They really don't want what the Western media says. And so another example is, I told you the Egyptians used to control the Gaza Strip, and they've even offered to give it like maybe they should give it back to the Egyptians. Like, they don't want it. They don't want to deal with it because it's out of control. And like the radicals would cause problems in their country, which they already had when the Muslim Brotherhood caused all this drama in Egypt some years ago. This also happened in the West Bank, which is what we call Judea and Samaria. We would call the West Bank here in U.S. media, but it's actually called Judea and Samaria. And the Jordanians, the PLO was causing the PLO, if I recall, tried to overthrow the Jordanian government, like the king over there, and they killed the Jordanian government killed a bunch of these dudes. I was like, was that like Black October or Black November? Like it was this like, they tried to do come at the king, you best not miss. Well, they missed, and the Jordanians killed all of their asses. That's how a lot of them ended up in Lebanon. So they're kind of stateless there too. So, the reason Gaza might have happened right now is because they know that Saudi Arabia and Israel and the U.S. are talking, and a lot of these Arab countries are looking to throw the Palestinians under the bus because they're sick of them and they're more worried about Iran. And so that might be a motivation for doing what they did and the timing and all that kind of stuff. It may not be, it's not a conspiracy. It's geopolitical reality. Oh, in political news, because, hey, if the Russians are going to hack Hunter Biden's computer, why not hack Frank Biden's phone and publish nude photographs? This is Joe Biden's brother, one of his brothers, and publish photographs of him with his schlong out on gay dating sites. Apparently, maybe as late as 2017. It's just like, I don't know. There's either something wrong with the Bidens, or the Russians somehow maybe, or hackers have a hard on for Biden electronics. So, I don't know what's the simplest, what's Occam's razor from the TV show or the movie. What's the simplest answer is probably the correct one. So you can guess from that what as you wish. Is Frank Biden publishing, on gaydate.com or whatever the fuck that bullshit website is, or is it the Russians? It's like, okay, yeah. In other, I guess, kind of pseudo political pop culture news, there was a story out of New York, and it got a lot of press until the stuff blew up in the Middle East. There was a guy, he's an activist, and I think he's like a peace activist and whatever, and all these different things. And he's walking down the street in New York with his girlfriend, and he gets attacked by this young man, and gets stabbed to death. I think got his throat slit, whatever. And so he died. And, it's like he's one of these people that doesn't like the police and makes all these excuses for crime, and he ends up getting killed by the street crime. And the person that killed him turns out works for the New York City school boards in some capacity, and is also mentally ill, and was known to be mentally ill, and still walking around, and still somehow work for the school board. It's like, yeah, I don't, it's so difficult to figure out what the problems are here. It's like, I just can't get the corners to line up to figure out what to solve what I just can't quite put my finger on it. What could it possibly be? But I'm not telling you that to tell you the story. I'm telling you that to tell you another story. So this person who died, probably Democratic Socialist, uber leftist, person. So he's got some friends, and they decided to start a fundraiser for him on like GoFundMe or Patreon, whatever the website is. And last I checked, they had raised $60,000. And you're like, that seems appropriate, and probably money for the girlfriend or the fiance, whatever she is, probably to pay for funeral expenses, maybe help the family because, they have to take time off. There could be all kinds of reasons, to want to help. Maybe there's children and help money towards their education, later in life. You could do all kinds of, reasons to raise money, when there's a tragedy. And what happened to this person is a tragedy. I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, it really is. Like, it's just, people that live by the sword die by the sword. And, sometimes the sword is, a Nerf sword, and it's not a real sword. But anyway, so his friends who raised the money, guess what they did with the money? Have you heard? They took the money, and their plan was to, like, it was like 3 of them. And so they were going to take the money and pay themselves so they could take like 2 or 3 weeks off of work each to mourn their friend's passing. So they used this man's death as a fundraising opportunity for themselves so they don't have to work. And it's like, damn, at least that, the commies are consistent. We'll have a link on the website about it. Okay, so we're going to get the police blotter, and we're going to go ahead and toss this one. First one is, most of you have heard this, but a YouTube prankster by the name of Tanner Cook, and I think his YouTube channel is like Professional Goon or something Goon or something with the word goon in it. And so what this guy does is he basically harasses people while filming them and publishes it to his YouTube channel. And he's a prankster, and it's not funny stuff. I mean, I'm not a doctor, even though I do play one in the bedroom. Thank you. I went to this Tanner Cook's website, or to his YouTube channel, this prankster guy, and kind of looked at some of his content. He seems off to me. Like, I think there's maybe more going wrong there than just poor judgment. But but like, how poor is his judgment? Well, he was in a mall. He apparently goes to this mall wherever he lives, and he was, I think it was a food delivery guy picking up food, taking it to people's houses. And this man is a large man. I'm 6'1". I'm 240, 245. This kid's like, I don't know, 6'3", 6'4", maybe 6'5". I know he's considerably bigger than me, and he's basically stalking this man through the mall with with like some kind of holding the phone up, trying to provoke some kind of response, and his friends are videotaping it. I mean, like, the delivery guy, the delivery driver could easily assume he's about to get jacked, because it certainly looks like that, because it just doesn't make any sense. So the delivery driver pulls out he pulled out a small handgun and shot Mr. Cook, right into Tookus, and he lived. But it's one of these things where, I would say it's an ambiguous. No, it's not. It's a justified look. There's two. Unfortunately, with this kind of shooting, there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the letter of the law, and then there is the the people's court. Okay, and the people's court definitely, and I'm of the opinion that it's like, yeah, Mr. Tanner Cook, YouTube prankster, crazy person with whose pH is off. He ate a bullet, and deservedly so. And you hate to say that. You don't want anyone to get shot, but you see this and you're like, oof. Also, the other side of the argument is the person who shot him. Certainly, I think he was charged with a couple offenses, but the only one that stuck was, he was charged for carrying a gun, I think, in a mall where they were posted you couldn't carry. It might have been in New York. So that's what he got jammed up on. The more serious stuff he didn't get jammed up on, but I think the guy's still in jail. So it's just not a good situation all around. You could, from a self-defense professional perspective, you could potentially make an argument that maybe it should have, you done some empty hand stuff first, or tried to do something to break contact, as opposed to, pulling out the handgun. But, he pulled out the handgun, and he did get charged with attempted murder. He beat it. So, and any crash you can kind of walk away from, even though he's in jail. Second thing is, this one's kind of a police blotter. It's kind of a disappointing thing for me, but I wanted to mention it because specifically what's disappointing. Senator Tommy Tuberville, I think he used to be a football coach, called the Capitol Police because General Mike Hayden basically made a threat against him on Twitter. And, I mean, they've been getting incidents for a while, but I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to bring up Mike Hayden because General Hayden has. Look, I'm not unfamiliar with General Mike Hayden. For a long, long time, and he was someone I have a lot of respect for. He was never conservative. He's from Pittsburgh, whatever. But General Hayden, since Donald Trump had become president, has continually disappointed me personally again and again and again and again. I cannot believe how out of control Mike Hayden has gotten to be since Trump has become president. What Mike Hayden, says on Twitter, what he says, he signed that letter, attesting that the Russians had hacked into Hunter Biden's computer. It was disinformation. The computer wasn't real, whatever that bullshit was. And it's just like, you see these guys and, they're supposed to be professionals and are supposed to be, acting in certain ways. And even if they don't agree, they don't have to be like psycho crazy. And Mike Hayden was a very reasonable, professional, career military Air Force officer, intelligence officer, and he has turned into a lunatic. And it's like the biggest crack up that I think I've seen in a long time. And because he's not super high profile, it doesn't get a lot of press and a lot of play because the media just likes he's one of many, and so whatever. But I'm looking at him and I'm so disappointed, just how out of control that is. And so, there's two ways this can go. And I can talk about two generals in particular. I can kind of reference a third, but most of you wouldn't really get it. So the first one most recently is the Mark Milley. He just retired. He just left the Army. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was Trump's chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And Milley had turned into a partisan wackadoodle. And, I'm probably not being fair to Milley. Milley had done a lot of stuff. And General Milley's ultimate problem was, and the media doesn't portray it this way, but his ultimate problem was he was behaving in ways that made it obvious to the president, hence it was Trump, that he didn't support him, he didn't agree with him, and he wasn't doing everything he could to execute, his orders, what's under civilian control. And what he should have done is he should have resigned. He either shouldn't have let his personal feelings enter into the Oval Office and affect his relationship with President Trump. And conversely, ass kissing with Joe Biden. If he either should have done that, or if he felt so strongly about it that he couldn't do or say or be a part of this administration or the previous administration, he should have resigned with honor and and some dignity. And who did that? Secretary of Defense, former General Mattis. Mattis did not agree with Trump. Mattis didn't like Trump. Mattis is a liberal. I got bad news for you. Mattis might even be gay. That is a real rumor. Neither here nor there, but it's worth mentioning it. But Mattis and Trump had a big falling out specifically over, it was two things. It was Trump telling NATO members that they need to start paying their 2% per their NATO obligations. and boy, has history really proven him right. Also, he's complaining to Angela Merkel about the natural gas deal with Russia, with Germany, and he's again proven right. And then they got into a big snit because Trump wanted to pull everybody out of Syria, and Trump ordered Mattis to do it, and Mattis was dragging his feet. And Trump was like, it's been 3 months. Why aren't we out of Syria? And Mattis got caught dragging his feet. And so he resigned. But you know what? He resigned and went off and did what he's supposed to do. And even his resignation letter basically said a president deserves to have somebody who agrees or will support, his authority or, whatever his plans are. These dudes like Mike Hayden and, Mark Milley, I haven't seen a bigger group of pissant fucking unprofessional generals that have been permeated the military. It's unbelievable, how bad this has gotten. And so, all right. And then like, this is police blotter. So this is going to come under the police blotter, but this is a story out of Isreal, and I think it's worth mentioning because it's so inspiring. It's getting reported multiple places. I'm hoping it's true. I mean, I wish none of it was true, but this story is, so there was the kibbutz, various kibbutz that got hit by the Palestinian terrorists, a few days ago. There's a particular kibbutz called Kibbutz Nir Am, Nir space AM. And, it's like a little village, community village kind of thing. And they have a security detail. I guess they typically have like a reservist IDF soldier there who's like head of their security. Well, this person, at least with that shift, was a female IDF soldier named Inbar Lieberman, Inbar Lieberman, female, 25. Israeli woman Inbar Lieberman, 25, is hailed as a hero for saving Kibbutz Nir Am from invading Hamas. So basically what was happening was, this kibbutz is near the Gaza Strip. They occasionally get rocketed or they hear things or, whatever. But she heard stuff that was like, this is different. Like she's hearing things that aren't normal, even for, abnormal bad stuff. So she basically sounded the alarm. She rounded up her volunteer security team of, I don't know if it was like a dozen people. And they all got out their rifles and they set up kill zones. And they fought against the Hamas people when they came to this particular kibbutz, and they killed 25 of them. This woman, this soldier, the director, Inbar Lieberman, she personally shot 5 of these guys, smoked the shit out of them. I don't know how many, like they killed 25 of them. I don't know how many of them they were fighting, but if she hadn't sounded the alarm, because it was her instinct. She's like, this is different. I don't know. Like she could hear things off in the distance. She didn't get an alert like a phone call. She was just looking at the ground and like just, taking in feedback and going, something's different here. We should maybe, tighten up the ship a little bit. And it's a really inspiring story. And there's even talk that she'll probably get the Israeli prize, or the Isreal prize, which is the highest award that any Israeli citizen can get. And it's a story worth reading. I'll put it up on the website. Well, this wraps up episode 319 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see any more stories or pictures or links of anything we discuss, please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good night.